Today's episode is sponsored by Billy Keel's Advisory Services. If you want to learn more about how to make your 99 optional, just go to makeitoptional.com. Once again, that's makeitoptional.com.
Helping you build freedom without losing your edge. This is the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels.
One of the things that I love the most about being able to host this podcast is when there are connections of connections. So being able to learn from, meet, and interview some absolutely phenomenal people. And today is absolutely in line with that, because you know what? Today's guest is an emotional intelligence coach and former Google and Microsoft leader who today is helping ambitious professionals reconnect with what truly matters and doing that without burning out. You know why? Because she's also originally from Palestine and now today is based in La Belle France. And she blends this wonderful cognitive behavioral tools with deep emotional insights to help support sensitive high achievers in building lives that they no longer need a vacation from. You know, she is the founder of Hayati & Company, and she hosts the Big Meaningful Life podcast and is absolutely passionate about mental wellness, sustainable success, and redefining achievement in your own terms. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome to today's conversation, Sally Mahamdeh. Sally, welcome to the show.
Oh my gosh, Billy, that was, I think, the best way anybody has ever introduced me. I mean, even better than I introduced myself. Thank you.
Well, you make it super simple. And I can't wait for everybody to learn more about your story. Super awesome. And I'm so glad that we got connected and I've gotten a chance to get to know more about you and your story because of the inspiration behind it. I'm sure is going to help so many of our listeners today. So thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. And honestly, I told you this over LinkedIn. I'll tell you this live again. I feel super inspired by your story. I love the way you have redesigned, rebuilt your life. I told you, you're an incredibly resilient person. So when we end this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to book you on my podcast as a guest, because I think my audience would love listening to your story.
All right. Sounds like a plan. See, there you go, everybody. You book when you're having a live audience, which is fantastic. No, I love it. So listen, Sally, I did my best to help everyone understand a bit about your story. It's just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But what I would really love for you to do is talk about your story in your own words. And I'd really love for you to highlight what are some of the different major decisions that you've made to get to this point in your journey. And then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
No, it's a good question. That's such a good question. I think one of the biggest decisions I had to take was when I was 17, 18 years old, and I wanted to come to Europe and leave the Middle East. Back then, I was not very familiar with life designing and mindfulness and intentional decision making. I just felt drawn to something, and I could not explain. I mean, we were under British mandate. We were not, French is not even the language Palestinians speak. That was really just a pure passion, something I was interested in. And it's funny because I'm mentioning this because you will see as I learned more and more about behavioral science, I was able to name those attractions and why I felt strongly about something. But I think that was probably the biggest decision I had to take when I was that young. And then the second decision was once I studied in France, I finished my 5-year studies, had my master's degree from the Sorbonne. I realized that the expectation was that I go back home.
Yeah.
But Billy, I just could not explain it. I remember calling my parents and saying, I can't explain this right now, but I just feel like I have to stay. I feel like I need to stay. I feel like I'd be happier if I stayed. And as most parents would do, we birth parents and we just want our children to be happy. They said, okay, we don't get it, but we're supporting you. And so that was the second major decision. From there, I had finished my degree. I had a dual degree, engineering and management. And so I started working at Microsoft. I was in an EMEA team. I started traveling, started to get more familiar with other cultures other than the French and Palestinian culture. I fell in love with the traveling bit. I think every week we would be in a different country, talking to different clients. I honestly think it was out of my 14 year of career in tech, these were the most exciting years. The year, and I'm not talking about just like jumping in a plane and being at a hotel, no, but meeting with people who come from a completely different world and talking to them about, for me, it was the same topic. I was a cloud pre-sales engineer. And the client, for example, in Africa, they would have challenges that the client in the Gulf would not have, and the client in the Middle East would not have. Sometimes the challenge was the problem. Sometimes it was the temperature. Sometimes it was the distance. Sometimes it was the connectivity. And it was just so amazing for the 25, 26-year-old that I was to realize how big the world is and how different every country is, and how even though a continent unifies countries, it's still there's such a big cultural difference between one piece and the other. So that was incredibly eye-opening. And I think that was when I fell in love with traveling and just immersing myself in different cultures. From Microsoft, I was hired. Back then we used to say headhunted. I don't like the word anymore, but you know what I mean, on LinkedIn. So I started working at Google as an advisor for some global accounts. And I first started in ads and then moved into the cloud part. The organization was growing. And I remember when I joined Google Cloud Friends, I think we were something like 85 employees. And that was 2019. And so there was a big plan, massive plan of increasing and growing that division. And at the same time, that was when my passion started growing for behavioral science. I had negotiated with one of my first managers at Google to go to a training in London, a training called Search Inside Yourself. It's now an institute, and they drive mindfulness-based trainings, neuroscience-based trainings. And I remember being in that training, and this is a story I also shared on Maurice's podcast, and just sitting there 3 days, Billy, full intense days with 1 hour lunch break. And I had been on a lot of tech conferences with Google and Microsoft. Almost every 3 months, I'd be sent to a conference, either to speak or to attend. I remember not remembering to go to pee, or not even remembering to have some water, or not even just, looking at the time. I would have no idea of what time it was. And it was the first time I was in what we call the flow. I was in complete immersion. All my senses were mobilized. I had no space of feeling distracted or bored or annoyed. And I remember after those 3 days, I was thinking, I've never experienced this before. I loved the companies I worked for. I really appreciated the culture. I loved the innovation bit. But I had never experienced that sense of me and the space I'm in were one, and nothing else existed outside of that space. So I remember coming back to Paris and thinking, I want more of this. But back then I didn't know in which form or what shape or what capacity. So I just started enrolling myself in trainings, negotiating with my managers back then and asking them if I could go. And I had a couple of really good managers, really great managers, and both said, you know what, Sally, you're going to do it. We're going to support you financially. So pay like 1/3, 2/3, and you're going to come back and train the team. And you're going to come back and do something for the division. So I did that for the first training, which was just the 3-day training. And then when I decided that I wanted even more and more of this, my manager said, look, let's do something here. And so I got my coaching degree. And when I came back, the goal was that I invest in that degree, doing something with Google. And because Google was growing like crazy back then, Google Cloud, that was an entity that was growing. What happened is, I started working with the managers around the onboarding experience, because Google has a lot of beautiful processes, but the processes were not working when you were getting 30, 40, 50 new hires in the entity, especially in sales roles. So, and we were behind the market. We were behind Microsoft, behind AWS. And so there was this big pressure that the managers were getting, and that was coming back to the employees. And so we were thinking about this amazing process that Google had created for a different period, a different space of growth, and how do we create something personal? So I interviewed the employees, 1/3 of them, and then asked them anonymously to submit feedback, and then asked if they were volunteers. We created a whole social intelligence program. It was amazing, still runs at Google Cloud France, and we called it Life at, like that's how we called it. And I managed that program for 3 years. And by the time, I think the third year, I got pregnant, had a baby, COVID, the whole story. And I remember coming back from my maternity leave. So I had my coaching degree. I started coaching outside of Google as a side hustle. And we were opening a data center in France, and I had AI and data partners. So very important partners, strategic partners We had events all the time, executive dinners, executive breakfasts, executive lunches, talking about the data center and like how the partners can support and how can we get more clients. And I remember just feeling like, hey, I had experienced something that I was enjoying, and I don't know how much I'm enjoying this. And then I was, with all of these events, I started missing the times my daughter would go to sleep. She was a baby. I think she was something like one year, even a little bit younger. And so she would go to bed very, very early, like 7 p.m. She would already be asleep. So multiple times in the same month, the month of the data center launch, I think I missed putting her to bed 15 times. And I remember the 15th time I came back home, she was already put to sleep. And I just started crying and thinking, okay, I don't, like, something doesn't make sense. I don't get that this is not working. But by then I had my coaching degree. And I realized that I was not feeling aligned. My priorities were clear in my own head, but then the way I was carrying myself and the way I was letting my agenda drive how my day goes, that was not aligned with what I had in mind and with why I had these intentions. And so I remember that moment, the month of June of 2022. And the next day I went to see my manager and I said, look, this is not working. I'm going to step out of my role. And he said, yeah, sure. Take a long weekend. We'll talk about this on Monday. And I said, I was not thinking a long weekend. It's like, well, fine, take a week. Let's talk in a week. I'm like, I'm not even thinking a week. So I remember his face, panicked face looking at me. What do you mean, Sally? And I said, I think I'm just going to need a break. I'm going to need to do some thinking and figure out what the future looks like for me. And he said, hey, look, if you're feeling down or tired, just, have the break. And I said, no, this is not fatigue. This is different. I don't think this is about rest. I think I can take 1, 2, 3 long weekends and I think I'll feel misaligned again. Because by then I had that clarity that this is not about time. This is not about me going to, the Bahamas and having a break. Because what I was feeling was very, very deep. And it was me not being able to align my intentions with my actions. But also one thing that since then I have really specialized in burnout and I've been really digging deep and understanding the neuroscience of it. Back then I didn't have the words. It just seemed to me with my intuition that I needed to step out to gain the clarity of what should be the next steps. And now I know that this is exactly what a person going through burnout needs to do. Because the mind is in such a strong survival mode. All the resources are overstimulated and oversolicited. And the only way to gain some clarity and to have access to our sage powers and our wisdom is to reduce the level of stimulation and solicitation. And so the stepping out of the role, for me, that meant taking a 6-month sabbatical, but it doesn't have to look like that. With my clients, we sometimes work on just them taking a leave of a couple of weeks. Sometimes it's a dende. But the most important, I would say the most important part is that we need to step out. So back then I just didn't have the words. I said, look, I need to step out. I know this doesn't make any sense right now. And he was like, yeah, I mean, you're on a really good threshold right now. Your numbers are cool. What are you doing? Da, 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 da. But I knew that I just had to do this or something bad was going to happen. I knew that I was not taking the road that made any sense to me. My sleep was degrading. My appetite was degrading. So I just knew I needed to step out. But I mean, we both know because we both were in, like important roles in tech companies. It took time for me to be able to step out. So I said that in June, but I was actually able to step out in October because I had a portfolio. I needed to transfer the knowledge, inform the clients, the partners. I remember that month of October, me stepping out and thinking, okay, what now? My whole life I've been hustling. Yeah. Even when I was a student, I do internships and apprenticeships and I do student jobs and I never, ever was just still. So that was the biggest part of my first challenge, like the stillness. I didn't know what to do with stillness. What do you do with free time? I never had free time. So that was the first funny part or like strange part of the break. Everyone said, hey, enjoy yourself. I'm burnt out. I'm not in the enjoyment space right now. I'm just really trying to figure out what happened. So I was very focused on that. And once I took care of myself and on my own recovery and healing, I started coaching again. Mm-hmm. And by the time my leave was ending, I extended the leave with another 6 months of sabbatical, continued coaching. And then when I couldn't extend the leave anymore, my HR said, hey, Sally, we're really looking forward to welcoming you back. And I looked her in the eyes and said, I don't think I'm going to come back. I'm actually going to quit. And that was a year ago, as you know, a year and a half now. Since then, I've been coaching full time. I've also added training. emotional intelligence, social intelligence training with always the same focus as you beautifully said it in the intro. I think my biggest focus right now is how do we perform without neglecting our own needs and our own rhythm and our own selves? And how do we, success means different things to different people, but how do we make sure that we're going after meaningful goals and not just going for titles or things that are not super meaningful to us, but we think that, this is what we should be going for because everyone else is, and we're following the norms.
It's like the thing to do. So, so you've given us a really, really great understanding. I mean, everything from being born in one country, having a desire to move to another, which is something that I can relate to because I've spent about half of my life now living on another continent, one that I wasn't born in. The Sorbonne changed my life forever. So,
both alumni, I know.
Yeah, which is very interesting. But you said something that kind of caught my attention that I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned that when you were in the Google role, the advisor role, right? You were 2018, there's like these 85 employees, you have this growth plan.
Yeah.
But you said that there was something that was moving you to attend this search inside yourself. It was search inside yourself, right?
Yeah,
that was the name of it.
Yes, search inside yourself.
Have you ever stopped to figure out, like, really to think about what was that? Because if that was the first time, like a lot of times it's hard to really put words to it. But what I find, and I'm sure you see the same thing with clients, is that there's this calling and you can't figure out what is actually happening. Like it is because you enjoy your job. It's the same thing that you're talking about. Like you have all this momentum and you just don't create the space. But what was it in 2018, if you've stopped to think about it, that was pushing you to go to search inside yourself?
It's an amazing question. I met someone. So I think I met them in 2015, and they just had a different way of carrying themselves than most of the other people I had met. So this person was my sales counterpart in the EMEA team at Microsoft. And people in the team were making jokes, like, oh, he drinks or he's doing drugs. It's because he lives by the beach. It was a sort of an unconscious jealousy because he was just very calm and composed. And he had just this Zen vibe that was incredibly, incredibly glowing. Yeah. And I got to travel with him to many countries. And so we had to do some talks and presentations together. And one day I told him, I said, hey, I want to tell you something. I hope you don't get offended, but everyone in the team is talking about your Zen vibe. Some people are making jokes that it's because you live by the beach or it's because, like you drink or you do drugs. And he laughed so hard. And he said, Sally, I went through a major life crisis. And I decided to do some inner work, some introspection work, and to just put myself back on my feet. And I first of all, that was the first time I had heard someone, especially a male, I would say, talk about a life crisis, separating from someone they loved, having to redefine themselves, find a new identity. And then he was telling me about the work. And the work was not drugs, alcohol, or anything. The work was silent walks, working out, working with a psychologist. Like that was the work he was talking about. And I remember that's it. That nothing magical, it's not like one thing you do. No, he's doing work. So that was the first time. We never named the work. He just said, look, I'm doing some of this and some of that. And then we got to travel a lot together. And I remember just having that sense that he was different. Something about him and about his quality of presence was different. And every time I tell him this, he laughs because now we're really good friends. I even had him facilitated some trainings for him last year. And we were just making the jokes that for me, this is how it all started. Yeah. One day we started exchanging books. So he told me, hey, Sally, I read this book. Tell me what you think of it. So there was The Four Agreements by Sir Ruiz. And then there was also Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. Yeah. And then he also recommended some books by John Kabat-Zinn. So he started referring some books to me. I would read the books. Then we would debate about the books during our travels. And it all started there. When I went to Google, I started missing that friend. And even though I had a lot of amazing friends at Google, they were amazing at different levels and dimensions, but I had not met someone like him. with that very composed and calm sense of being. And when I'm talking about composed and calm, it's because we were both in sales, doing sales in different countries with different growth rhythms. Our quotas were heavily impacted by, for example, a company in the Middle East who would not sign with us, and we were really counting on that signature. So like a Gulf country. And so we would go like, okay, so we're not meeting the quotas this quarter. Everyone would go crazy and everyone would get irritated. And I would not see him in that irritation. Yeah. Or for example, because we were EMEA resources, some people would be irritated that we were sometimes traveling, not responding to emails in less than 2 hours. And, the stuff, you've been there.
So anyone who's in a matrix or has ever worked in a matrix organization understands exactly what Sally's talking about. Right? Yeah.
And so he had a way of dealing with those things. And he would say something to me that I still think about up to today. He says, if something is not a problem in 3 to 5 years from now, then it really is not a problem. And when I think about that today, I think, wow, he was so right. So he had all these like wisdom bits and he was really practicing that kind of living. And so I go back to Google, meet a lot of amazing, amazing people, very, very smart, very, very kind, very, very generous, but I don't find that sense of, calm and just he was grounded. I think that's the word that comes to mind. And so one day I'm checking a training and then I see that a training is based on Daniel Goleman's work. And we had both read the book and debated the book. So I'm like, I'm going to go for that training. And that was the Search Inside Yourself training, the 3 days.
Okay. So it's amazing when you think about there's usually, because it's one of those stories that I talk about a lot. And we were talking about this a little bit before, but there tends to be like one moment in time or one person that is interacting in your life that stands out and catches your attention, but for the right reasons. And so it sounds like that 2015 kind of encounter that everybody else saw, you then had the courage to go find out more, right? You were in the right context. And then you took advantage of the opportunity, positively taking advantage to just really understand the curiosity. So the curiosity that you had to then learn more. And then that opened up a whole new portal for you to continue to, like, now as you continue in your own life path, it's something that continued to impact you. You talked about earlier also too, like because I think a lot of people talk about burnout, but they don't really define what it is. And so if part of it is that the intentions that you have being out of alignment with the actions that you're actually going through. What else would you add to that? If I've understood like the foundational understanding of burnout, because I don't think people really, they just say I was burned out, but they don't describe, well, how do you know?
That's an amazing question. I released a podcast episode on that literally like 2 Mondays ago because I was dropping my 5-year-old at school and I was introducing myself to her dad. We have just moved to Bordeaux. My daughter goes to an international school. She has just started in September. And so I was explaining to him my work and I said, I'm an emotional intelligence assessor and trainer. And my focus right now is on burnout prevention and recovery. And so he goes, oh, awesome, amazing. And then there's a silence. And then he says, can I ask you a very strange question? And I said, please go ahead. So, the bell rang, our daughters got in. And so it was just us parents. And he said, how do you know if you're burning out? And there were still some parents around us, right? So I start talking about burnout. And then he goes, I think I am burning out. And this is the thing. I talk about burnout today, but I did not talk about burnout in 2022 because I did not know I was burning out.
Gotcha.
Burnout has been studied for years now. I would say in the last 10 years, there has been a lot of solid research around burnout. At first, a lot of focus was around the workload. So if you heard about burnout, it was because someone was having a heavy workload to carry and the workload was too heavy for them and required them to excessively use the resources and excessively use their energy and not have enough time for recovery and reset. But then as research was expanding and also as more people were interviewed about how they experienced burnout, there was a major dimension that was really new. And I would say it's only been the past years. People were talking about not feeling enough stimulated by the environments they were in. And so there's been now names, you hear burnout, bore out, brownout. Like I see a lot of names depending on who's doing the research. In the past 5 years since COVID, there has been a lot of research, and the first research I read was the Better Up Foundation in the US, and it was about misalignment burnout. And so misalignment burnout is what I experienced. It was not a workload problem, because the workload, I mean, you know how it is, right, Billy? I mean, you do this job for such a long time. At one point, you find your own rhythm, you have partners, you have your own support system, you know, your clients. So for me, and this is where I was troubled. I was thinking, I can do this. I have done this. It's like the job is not the problem. However, because I had been doing my coaching degree, like heavily studying neuroscience, feeling a lot of joy in those. And I did half of my degree in the US and the other half remotely because of COVID. And so everyone would be like, oh, poor you, Sally. I was pregnant, working full-time job at Google and doing my courses in between 9 p.m. and midnight Paris time. And I would be like, not poor me. I'm having the time of my life. I'd be like eating my meal in front of the screen and just like, I can't wait to move to the next model. We had amazing speakers, amazing psychologists, neuroscientists. It was just honestly, like one of the most fun times of my life. And so when I went from that to forecast meetings, okay, let's organize this lunch. And now you need to check on your partner. They have 55 deployments and 30 are not going great. And so I was doing the same job. I thought, I'm the same human being. Why is this not working? It has worked in the past. And what had changed was that I tried a different kind of world, industry, I'd say just even like role. And that role felt very, very, very aligned with my values and also with my centers of interest and also with the way I wanted to do work. And so when I had to pull myself back into that space, and I was really resisting my own intuition and emotions and thinking, hey, this worked before, it must work now. This worked before, it must work now. What happening for me was this misalignment. So for me, there was different levels of misalignment. First of all, the fact that I had tried a different space where I felt more into my element, and then that I had become a parent and that I aspired to become a parent who is present and loving and all about connection. And I was missing putting my daughter to sleep. And I knew, and I had studied how important that phase is. It is a very anxious phase for a child to go into the night, the long and dark night, without having been secured by your parent and having, been soothed and loved. And so it was thinking, I want to be that kind of parent, but I'm also a high achieving person. Yeah. And because of that high achievement, I want to do all the exact stuff and I want to run all the exact meetings and so do both. I mean, not working. And every time I need to take a decision, I'm not really succeeding at saying no. Yep. So there was that also. So the values and also feeling more into my element and more into my flow in a different role that I had experienced a year ago.
Yeah. And so I love you being able to break that down for us. And, you're talking about the story and I have this philosophy in terms of high achievers. And a lot of people talk about balance and talk about, being able to find work-life balance. I fundamentally believe that for high achievers, balance is not possible because it's just, I was frustrated for so many years during corporate because I was looking for balance and I'm a high achiever. So I should have not been looking for balance. I should have been looking for, and it's a simple shift, but harmony, like being where my feet were, like when I'm all in on this thing and I have to be okay with that. And the people that are in my life have to be okay with that in order for me to feel aligned. But you're telling your story, and it reminds me a lot of when I talk about this very publicly. Like I missed my son's 3rd birthday party because I wanted to be at the executive meeting that was happening in Germany, and I wanted to see my son. And so I saw my son that morning. So I actually saw him. I just missed the birthday party. So when the birthday party was going on and everybody was together, and I was at this executive meeting, I realized like this is not what I want to be. I don't want to feel like this, and that was the catalyst for me doing things differently in my life. And it almost sounds like there's this, if you're not paying attention to what's going on in your body, there will be moments in time, context in your life where you will recognize very drastically that you're out of alignment with what your value system is. And so it sounds like that was something that was happening for you over time. And it was something that happened very drastically for me on my son's third birthday party, but it's interesting to hear these kind of concepts. And I know a lot for our listeners and our viewers. By the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll see my head, as Sally was talking, my head's going up and down, because I'm like, yeah, I relate. Now I can relate to all that. Like, yeah, I really relate to all that stuff.
And I'm like, yes. Yeah. It's music in my ears. I think one thing that I had missed was, and now it's something I approach very proactively with my clients is, as I told you earlier, I was just thinking like, this worked before, it should work now. And I had refused to acknowledge that as a human being, I was evolving. Yeah. And when we were talking before we started recording the conversation, you said something so beautiful. You said, there have been so many things happening in my life, and I had to reinvent and like give it a take. Yeah. And now I just understand, I have anchored this thought that this is how life goes. Life is full of experiences, and we don't start an experience and end up being the same person. We evolve, we get to know ourselves better, we learn, and also we try things, and sometimes we like them and sometimes we don't. And so one of the things that I had at that time struggled to actually acknowledge was I started a coaching degree, and I graduated from that coaching degree, and I became a parent. And I just wanted to take my life off from where I left it. And I was just angry with the fact that it was not working. I just wanted it to work because, hey, this has worked before. You have been able to do this kind of job. The money is good. Just make it work. It was almost like I was begging myself to just like, please make it work. Let's just go back to where you were and just have everything work as it used to. And now we have this joke with the clients that we can't unsee the things that we've been seeing. It's just impossible. So instead of pushing all of the energy towards that space of resistance, it is actually more interesting to understand, hey, what did I actually see that I had not seen before? What is so new? Is this a new value? Is this a new sort of interest? Is this a new priority? Because my life has changed or shifted. And so are these emotions, for example, I'm more drawn towards, and I was not necessarily drawn towards those in the past. So in a way, instead of investing in the resistance, we are investing in the curiosity of what has happened for me, what has changed, and what do I want to do with it? And that will take us to healthier decisions versus just being in that space of anger and resentment and just not understanding why things are not working the way they used to.
Yeah, I love that. And so, and also too, there's something, you're talking about like investing in the curiosity versus the resistance. That's really powerful. You talked about, or I've read that you've talked about like your shift, like you had a shift in focus from seeking life's meaning to creating meaningful things, right? I'd like to know a bit about that, but also too, because I mentioned in the very beginning, you have your own podcast, which is the Big Meaningful Life podcast. So maybe you could kind of combine those two. How do those two come together as you start to continue to help others?
Man, I can tell you've had 500 episodes. Your questions are so good. This is the funny part is when I was young, I think I was 14 or something, I used to listen to a song by Stacey Oracle. I don't even know if she's released any albums since, but it was called There's Gonna Be More to Life. And the lyrics of the song were there's going to be more to life. It just can be like about this. Every time I'm wandering, And I think the first 30 years of my life, I'm 37 now, I was convinced, Billy, that there was some wisdom and there was some wise people, and I had to find the wise people. And there was this meaning. It was like a sacred, secret meaning, and I had to go and find it. And I think the switch for me happened when I started realizing that, well, my colleague, the one I'm telling you about, he was a sales executive. I mean, he was not even a mindfulness teacher. He was not even any kind of practitioner. He was just a human being, like a regular human being. And he was practicing things in his own life, and he was inspiring. He inspired me so much. And up until today, look, I'm on your podcast, this amazing podcast, and I'm not even telling you about the psychologists I trained with. I'm telling you about this one guy. And so I think that was it's been 7 years. And so the past 7 years, I've been realizing, hey, Sally, wisdom is not, with one human being who's living, I don't know, up in a hill in Nepal. I mean, of course, there are a lot of wise people living in Nepal. But what I'm saying is the wisdom is in you, Billy. The wisdom is in a client I'm talking to this afternoon. The wisdom is in every place. And for the meaning, I was convinced that I had to find my meaning or my purpose. And then I I met this person, Christophe. His name is Christophe. So I met Christophe, and then I go to this training in London. And then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I love this. I want to do more of this. I don't know how, or like how is this is gonna what shape it's gonna take. I'm gonna invest in it. And slowly I realized it's not something I have to find. I have to create. I find an emotion, I experience an emotion, and from there I have to create something. So for me, that meant side hustling for 4 years, and then from there moving to coaching and training full time. And I don't even know what the future holds. Last week, one of my dearest friends said, "Hey, Sally, like, have you got the answers you were looking for?" And I said, "Girl, I'm practicing." So I have found the answers for now. I am positive there are more answers to find for later. And I don't think that I have laid out the plan for the next 20 years. And she says, "But does that discourage you?" And I said, "No, it excites me. Now I know what I need and I know what I love. And maybe in a year, Belly, I'll tell you, hey, Belly, like something changed and I'm doing this, I don't know, like taking this new direction or this new dimension." In a way, I stopped thinking of things as there's one finality and I need to find it. And there's one piece of wisdom and someone has it. And there's one meaning to life. And like I need to go through I don't know, some extraordinary experience to go through it. I think when I started coaching my first clients, after these calls, when the client at the end of the session would go, "Thank you, Sally. My head was so tangled. I'm getting in clarity." Or when someone would say, "Sally, I was really anxious about this topic and I actually feel so much better now." I would think, "Oh my gosh, that's it." I mean, I don't even know where this will take me, but I want that. I want more of that feeling of feeling useful and impactful. And my use of time. So if I'm away from my family or from people I love, then I'm doing something out of service. And in that way, I realized that the meaning was not something I just needed to find once and for all. It was something I was creating through my small actions and then compounding those small actions until I felt comfortable enough and confident enough to say, "Hey, I'm stepping out of a sales role at Google where the money was great and I'm believing in myself and in that purpose that I have created for myself to be doing more." So it's been a big shift, I have to say, big shift to mindset.
Yeah, it is one of those things. Just are you enjoying the podcast?
I am. I'm loving it. It's one of my biggest joys is to talk to people who are like-minded. Like this also is a space of flow for me. I don't even know what time is it right now. I'm just looking at you and I'm enjoying this conversation.
That's it. Yeah, that's it. That makes two of us. Yeah, it's one of these things where, and I always say to people like, and I'm going to get ready and wrap up only because we're coming close to time, but it's one of those things where I feel very blessed to be able to host this podcast because not only do I get to learn from practitioners, right? Like real people who have done it. You've talked about it even before, like you were in a corporate role that you enjoyed. You had a side hustle, which becomes a business. And now you're able to serve others as a result of that. And so the fact that I get to ask you these questions and, on behalf of the Going Long family, it's one of those things that gives me great joy whenever I have a podcast. So I'm always kind of curious. Plus I have a really awesome team. So they make it easy for me. Just to
awesome
get up here now.
People know how to do their accent, but like awesome.
Yeah. So here's the thing. So just as we get close to the end, like one of the questions that I do want to ask you, it has to do with really talking to your future self, because it's one of the things that I realized that happened for me in 2023. Up until that point as a high achiever, pretty much, everything that I wanted moved in the right direction. Everything it worked, right? It always worked. And then I realized there's moments in life when things don't work. I was that classic high achiever, wanted to take most things on my own shoulders, didn't really want to reach out to a lot of other people. Once I started reaching out, I realized that no matter how many people loved me and poured into me and helped me and were there for me, at the end of the day, I had to look myself in the mirror and say, like, now you have to do X. Right. If you want to, rebound, get back, go further. And so there are those moments and those messages that you give to yourself, not necessarily when things are going well, like, because things are going really, really well. You just kind of absorb it and you kind of go and you take it. When things are not going according to plan. And if you're watching the video version, you'll see that I'm having a very nice, very, well-designed visual. But when you're at the bottom, or you feel like you're at the bottom is probably a better way to state it. That's also just a moment.
Yeah.
But you need to hear certain messages to help get you through that moment. And you talked about it yourself. Like now you're in a moment where you're going to have lots of life changes that are continuing to happen. There are going to be moments that are really, really high and moments that are really, really low. And one of the things as a high achiever that I would love for you to share, if you think about Sally 3 years from now, and you're going to go through those lows, what's the one message that you know you need to leave for yourself today that is going to help you when you look back 3 years from now, go, you know what, Sally, thanks so much for leaving. Thanks for leaving us that message. What's the one message you want to leave yourself?
Man, Billy, you're so good. These questions. These are some really awesome questions. So in full transparency and honesty with your audience, I told you that I'm coming from a low. I got pregnant this summer. It was a gift. I would say, honestly, just a gift. It was not an expected pregnancy. And the first 4 months, and I'm starting my 5th month, they did not go great. And I had to, my company was doing awesome and I was on a really, really good trend. And then I had to cancel and just delegate trainings and move coaching clients and even cancel some prospects. And I was feeling physically really unwell. And in the most complicated of those times, I remember just having some really angry thoughts like, okay, this is not working. I don't know where I'm going to be feeling better. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm not on a sick leave. Like I know in Europe, we have some amazing social rights. And I know this would not apply to my friends in the US, but in Europe, you can actually put yourself on a sick leave and get paid and just have some rest. So I remember that thought like, oh, now it was the first time I experienced the limitation of being an entrepreneur, that if I'm not working, my company is not making the money. At least in the business model I'm in, I'm coaching and I'm training. So it requires my full presence. And so I remember one day I was just so full of anger and I had moved a very, very important engagement. I had delegated it to someone else because I was literally not being able to get out of my bed and jump on a train and go to Paris and deliver it. And I remember thinking, okay, look at that time when you were burning out, not sleeping the night, not having any appetite to eat, taking care of your daughter and just like thinking, okay, now I need to do that quarterly business review. I need to do that slide. That time felt like the lowest of the lowest in terms of my mental and emotional well-being. And I look back at the time now with compassion and kindness and think, oh my gosh, because that happened, I was able to get the clarity that I needed to make the big decisions that I needed. I look back at when I had to leave Palestine and go to France and I cried. I remember telling my parents, I feel like my heart is tearing into pieces. I was in so much pain because it was the only word I had known. I had really loving parents. So there was without my ambition, there was no reason to leave home. Like home was a sweet and loving place. And so I remember that feeling. And then arriving to France and experiencing all the amazing experience, living in Nice and Toulouse and in Paris and thinking, oh my gosh, like the world is expanding, etc. So for me, and I mean, from my personal experience, sometimes the lows are what we need to get to the level of clarity that we couldn't get to when we were at the highs. And I feel like, and I exclude grief from any kind of low I talk about. I don't think there's any joy or happiness in losing someone we love. So that is the scenario that I exclude heavily. Any trauma-related experiences, there's nothing to celebrate about the trauma. I'm sorry. I mean, trauma is something to just, respect and honor. But I'm talking about those experiences where you feel out of alignment. I'm talking about those experiences where you feel like, for example, for us entrepreneurs, like the business is not working. We have lost money. We are not growing the company the way we used to. We're having challenges with our children. I have a lot of clients. They're very challenged with their teenage children. So there's all of that. And in those moments of complication, I ask myself, like, how low do I need to go to get to the level of clarity I need to get? Sometimes I ask myself, what do I need to learn from this? And there's something I need to learn. Otherwise, this experience would be gone. And I remember in one of my first trainings, I was talking to a group of other people training for coaching, and I said, for me, if I don't understand, if I don't understand what's happening yet, it means that the story is not over. So if I'm in this experience, and it's for me, this pregnancy, like this is how the first trimester felt like. I'm just sick. I'm sick of being sick. I'm unable to function or to work. And I had lots of like a big pipeline, and I had to literally let go of that pipeline for the things that could wait. I'm very grateful for the clients who were literally like waiting for me to go back on my feet. But for everything else, I just had to delegate. And I remember thinking, okay, what do I need to learn from it? And the learning was great. The learning was life can't wait. Life can't wait. I mean, a company, you restart. And I mean, you're one of those beautiful examples of, yeah, I mean, you get hit hard. And so you put yourself back together and you stand on your feet and you go dancing again. And so there's that part that I was thinking, okay, why did I need to learn? And then I realized, okay, Sally, this is what you need to learn. Life cannot wait. And sometimes you're just going to need to accept that stillness. I was a hyperachiever. I'm now working. I'm a recovering hyperachiever, working on just being a high achiever. So for me, the hyper and the high, the little difference is going out of your way and in full disconnection of yourself to just like achieve. And the high achiever acknowledges how much they love the achievement, but they do honor their mental and emotional well-being. So I'm thinking now, okay, Sally, maybe you thought that you had really figured out how to move from hyper to high, and this pregnancy tested the heck out of you. Because taking 4 full months off, that's not something I had literally not done in my career before. And it was not even something I had planned. It just literally happened. And I found myself just canceling and moving things. And one of my clients had a broken leg, and I could just resonate so much with them because, I mean, I'm pregnant. I don't have anything broken, but we have the same feeling, like I'm stuck in my body. I can't get this done. There's pain, etc. So I think that would be if I talk to my future self, if I talk to my past self, the question is, what do I need to learn? If I'm at the lowest of the lows, what do I need to learn? How low do I need to go to have that moment of clarity, to take the decision that I need to take, to create the change I need to create?
I love that. So, what do I need to learn from this? This is, it's a powerful one. So what that does, Sally, is it makes me think about, just the beginning of the conversation. And as we're having the conversation, you're talking about being very intentional at 17 years old to make a life decision, and one that took you from the place where you were born to a new country, new language, new culture. And then having another decision to be able to say, well, you know what? You went to university in the center of Paris and the Sorbonne, and you realized at 22, you're like, hey, you know what? I can't describe it, but like, I need to stay here. And so you decided that you needed to stay there. You decided from there that life was moving into a corporate role where you had this role across Europe, Middle East, and Africa for one of the largest known brands around the entire globe, Microsoft, right? And you started recognizing that traveling brought you new ways to view the world and help to enhance your world vision. And then from there, you realize, okay, you did that for a number of years, and then you were at Google. And then when you moved to Google, it was a different type of advisory role on global clients. And so you're taking the regional perspective and then bringing it globally. But then as you're in there, there's this one person who kind of stands out from everybody else and nobody gets it. And that draw you, like you went from your corporate curiosity to your like just personal curiosity to learn more about this person. And then that took you down another path where you continue to now explore areas of emotional intelligence, and you were able to really explore those. You did some of that through a side hustle, and then you went from side hustle to really recognizing like this is something that you want to dedicate more of your time, energy, and effort to. And so you continue to do that with Hayati and Company. You have your podcast, which is the Big Meaningful Life podcast. And I know everybody that's watching us and listening to us are like, Billy, just ask her the question. So I'm just going to ask you, Sally, what is the best way for the Going Long family to find out more about you, more about what it is that you're doing at Hayati and Company, and also more about the Big Meaningful Life podcast?
Oh my gosh, I'm loving this interview. I can't even tell you how much. There's the website, so hayati.co, hayatti.co. That's the website where you can request me to speak at an event, book training for your company, or even just get one-on-one coaching. And then there's LinkedIn. I think it's really the platform I'm most present on. These past 5 months, I've been on a very, very low level of presence because I was prioritizing my own health. But it's the space where I connect with people. It's how most of my clients found me actually these past 18 months. So there's two spaces. The podcast is available on all platforms. I know in Europe, people are mostly on streaming platforms, but in the US, what I see is that most of the listeners are listening on Apple Podcasts. So there's this too. And then I started literally like a year ago sending a newsletter. I'm all about science and research. It just helps me personally understand what's happening for me and my clients. So I think in the first 8 months I was doing it every week. And so I was working with my marketing assistant. I would read research and I would summarize the research and I would send it in the newsletter about burnout, how to know if you're burning out and because burnout is not one thing that happens to one group of people. It could look like different things. For some people, it would look like a lot of productivity. For some other people, it would look like very low level of energy. For some people, it's degraded relationships. So I try to write about those different dimensions of burnout on that newsletter. And now it goes out bi-weekly. And we have like 300 subscribers, mostly clients and prospects who work directly with me. But that's also a space where I share my knowledge. I realized a year ago that my personal mission was to democratize behavioral science. Just if I'm able to allow people, I love reading, I love research. I mean, that's my own but I know that not everybody will dedicate 2 hours a day to that. So my goal is I take all of that and I give you something you can read in 2 minutes. And in 2 minutes you go, hey, I learned something today. So that's also one thing I'm practicing.
Fantastic. So now Going Long family, you know where to find Sally. The one thing, because you mentioned LinkedIn, and I'm kind of a stickler for this, which is, and the Going Long family knows this already. Here's the thing. Please make it easy for you and Sally to continue the conversation. When, not if, but when you reach out to Sally on LinkedIn, do yourselves a favor. Please send Sally a personalized invitation. Let Sally know that you have already invested time watching, listening to us on the podcast, because it's going to help the two of you to continue that conversation in a much better fashion. So that's the request that I have of the Going Long family, is make sure you leave a personalized request when you reach out to her on LinkedIn. And Sally, what I would like to say to you on behalf of the entire Going Long family is thank you very, very much for deciding to invest your time with me, invest your time with us today. And thank you very, very much. Really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, Billy, because you really are someone who is inspirational to me. So me being here on your podcast and speaking to your audience, it's a gift. Thank you for the gift.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. And listen, Going Long family, go out, make it a great day. And thank you very, very much.